Hey everyone, welcome to Rationable Conversations. Today we have an amazing insight into the origin of life and a very special guest to help us do that with. See you on the other side of the intro. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is Abhijit from Rationable, and you are watching Rationable Conversations. Today, we have Dave Farina, who is otherwise known as Professor Dave, who has been doing a lot of amazing work in science communications for many years, actually, not just in helping students figure out their high school science or middle school science, as well as doing debates and doing debunking videos and a lot more amazing stuff. Professor Dave, welcome to the show.
Howdy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. In fact, I think we should have done this a long time ago, but for some reason or the other, it didn't work out because I really wanted to suss out what kind of content you made. And I've been following you, of course, for quite a while now. And is this your second foray into Indian science communications in a way?
Yeah, right. Science is dope. We did a little collab. Yeah.
Yeah. How was that? That was pretty amazing. And
sure.
Of course,
yeah, totally.
And of course, we've known each other for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I think 2018.
Yeah, we've seen each other. Some different conferences and things. Yeah.
Yeah, the science communication workshop which we did in near LA was absolutely amazing. I really wish they could do more, but what do you know? They're not doing it. But good to see you at SciCon last year, and this year you're a featured speaker. Or
I'm speaking this year. Yes, my plan worked. I went last year to weasel my way onto the roster, and that's exactly what happened. So yeah, I get to speak this year. I'm very excited.
Wicked. I am so happy for you. And I'm looking forward to it because I'm going to be there myself.
Nice.
And so I'll be watching you speak. And of course, we'll hang out, catch up. So the big thing which I really wanted to talk to you about today was your debate which you had recently on the origins of life. I was watching that debate. It was fascinating. And of course, there was a lot of stuff which kind of went totally over my head because I'm not really a scientist. I'm a science enthusiast. So and you'd been covering this guy before as well on your channel.
Yeah.
So tell us more about your opponent.
Yeah, there's a lot of lead up. There's a couple, it was about a 2-year back and forth. Essentially, I had been made aware of this guy, James Tour, because people kept linking me to some of his content, in particular, one video where he's very emphatically shouting, "We have no idea about the origin of life. We don't even know how to build the molecules of the," just stuff that, I saw immediately. I was like, okay, he's a chemist, but why is he saying all these things that are not true? Or at least he's twisting something. I was fascinated by it immediately. And then I looked into it and I saw the creationist ties and everything like that. And so I noticed that nobody was pushing back against him. And he was being propped up as this heroic guy speaking truth to power and everything and exposing the fraudulence of the abiogenesis community. And I was like, well, this is ridiculous. If nobody is going to debunk this guy, I guess I'll do it. But I wanted to differentiate my tone from something like flat earthers. So I tried to be a little bit softer because he is a real scientist. So I just made a little 40-minute video and exposing a little bit of the agenda there and commenting on what was fallacious that he was saying. And he completely flipped out and made a 14-part series about how dumb I am. And so that's not going to fly. So I made a 2-part series responding to that, both of which got 1 million views. So he was even more irate. So he made another series about me that was like really out of line, a lot of character assassinations and cartoons of me and all these ridiculous things. So I made another series debunking that. And then as part of it, accepted this phony debate challenge that he had put out quite a bit earlier to grandstand for his fans. And of course, he then begrudgingly had to accept. We took about a month to hash out the terms, but finally flew out to Houston and did it, and hilarity ensued. So,
yeah, that was quite an insane debate. That got quite heated. Yeah. And you had R and Ra who attended.
Yeah,
that must have been something, right?
Sure, we had been casually acquainted for a while, and so we were talking about it, and I was like, well, yeah, it's I don't know how far you are, presumably just a couple hours, so come on down, and yeah.
Oh, that, I mean, that was like, and I saw a video of Aaron's which just came out shortly before the debate, and he said, I'm just going into this debate with Dave Farina about the origin of life. And I was like, what's that? And then I quickly searched for it, and then I found your video. So
Mhm.
I found the entire debate right then.
Yep.
So, how did you go around preparing for a debate like this? And what kind of background did you have in origin of life sciences? Like, how did you look it up, etc.?
So prior to covering James, not very much at
Mm.
all. But I learned a lot through the exchange because I ended up reading a significant amount of the primary literature. I actually ended up corresponding with, and in some cases interviewing, many of the prominent members of the field. So actually, over the past 2 years, I've learned an immense amount. I wouldn't call myself necessarily an expert on origin of life research, but I'm very well versed in it now at this point. I certainly know more than James does. But in terms of preparing for the debate, it was challenging because the thing is, my side, I was very much at the deficit because when you're interacting or debating with somebody like James, where there's zero intent to approach the subject with any kind of shred of intellectual integrity or honesty, he can lie about anything, right? He can lie about any subfield within the field. He can lie about any paper. He can lie about any researcher. So I have to be prepared to counter whatever he's going to throw out. So I had about 100 papers that I had queued up and knew some things about and could go depending on what he wanted to lie about. And so definitely the preparation was necessary because there were a couple instances where he threw out a very specific claim, and I actually did have a paper ready to counter what he was saying to demonstrate that what he was saying was not valid. But yeah, it was a laborious preparation, but yeah, it paid off because I had quite a bit of literature ready to make him look like a fool. So.
Which I think you did. That was quite
Mhm.
successful. But so for a layperson like me, like I'm sure a lot of our viewers are, how does one kind of start? Where does one start to start understanding the basics of the origins of life? Where does one look? What can one look up to learn more?
Unfortunately, what I would say is that one absolutely has to have a basic understanding of chemistry, biochemistry, and biology, and physics,
Mhm.
honestly. So it is a tricky subject, and it's why James is so revered in the creationist community. It's because there's almost no creationist who can even speak about it. You know what I mean? The other
Ah.
Discovery Institute guys, when they talk about it, they sound like buffoons because they don't understand chemistry. So James does understand chemistry. He's a chemist, but unfortunately, that allows him to use his chemistry speak to trick the viewer. But it is definitely true that we're talking about the assemblage of the components of life. And so we have to understand what those components are, how they come about, how they function, what their function is supposed to be, how that can have changed over time. But yeah, you really just go at it little by little, and then you get surprised when you turn up new, like systems chemistry for me was the field that I'd never even heard of, but is this field that examines the interactions of sets of biomolecules and how those can evolve over time and even display Darwinian principles. There can be natural selection occurring on the molecular level absent of any biological system. And so this was like completely blew my mind. And you just don't know about these things until you start looking at that. And I think that many fields of science are like that. I mean, you can start looking at astrophysics and go, oh, I had no idea this existed or anything like that. So it's very dense, but yeah, if you're interested, yeah, to be honest, my debunks of James serve actually as pretty good primers for the field because I go ahead and look at a lot of the kind of the landmark research, the primary researchers in the landmark papers
Mhm.
in the field. So you do get a good introduction that way.
Oh, cool. So I'll link those videos in the description so that
Sure.
everybody can go through that. But just for a primer, could
Uh-huh.
you just, what's the prevailing theory about the origin of life on Earth?
So it's a mixture of a lot of things. So
Mhm.
obviously, first we need to have the components of life. We need to have biomolecules. So we need polypeptides, which then act as proteins. You need nucleic acids, in this case RNA, and so those would be the two main ones because those are the ones that have biological functions. And so the RNA world hypothesis posits that RNA first served as the first genetic material, but also as the first enzymes that kind of did reactions. So you could have these RNA molecules that would catalyze reactions. They could build other things. So they could maybe build short peptides, short sequences of amino acids. And then there's a lot of work being done in systems chemistry that has to do with autocatalysis and systems of molecules that can replicate themselves and amplify themselves. So that's obviously a huge aspect. That's a huge part of abiogenesis, right? We need to have something that is self-replicating before you can have, right? Any living system, self-replication has to be a component there, right? So that's the RNA world. There's obviously a lot more to it, but then there's all these other hypotheses that have to do with like metabolism first and how very small molecules can have brought about rudimentary metabolic pathways. Because obviously, if you have a bunch of molecules enclosed in a vesicle, there has to be some source of energy to be able to promote all of these different reactions that are happening. So it seems to me that where we're at is that there's going to be some kind of a synthesis of these various hypotheses. I think that there are aspects of many that work in tandem, and we're definitely not in a place where we know exactly what happened. But I think it's due to us having so many conceptions of so many viable possibilities that it's hard to weed out the ones that for sure didn't happen. But yeah, hot springs is probably the place where it maybe first started. And then you get your RNA, you get your peptides enclosed in a vesicle, evolution over time, over millions of years potentially, until you get something that looks like a rudimentary protocell. Pretty much
So, and these little vesicles, what are they made of? Because I read, I think, in a Scientific American many years ago that it is probably lipids which were created in layers of clay at the bottom of the ocean. Is that still a thing?
Yes, certainly lipids. There's some discussion as to what type of lipid, because the thing is, we all know that our cells have phospholipid membranes, but phospholipids have to be synthesized. It's not that simple, but there's a lot of data that supports the idea that is just very simple fatty acids. So a much simpler kind of lipid, making a monolayer, not even a bilayer, like they are in our cells. So a fatty acid monolayer was most likely the first membrane. Now, obviously, it cannot have been as complex with so many membrane proteins and channel proteins, things like that. So it was very simple at first, but yeah, everything complexified over time, both in the membrane, internally, etc.
That is fascinating. And of course, it's developed a lot more than that article I read in, I think it
Yeah.
was a Scientific American.
The thing is, it's almost impossible to talk about this topic for a layperson. It's extremely difficult because there's almost nothing that you can say, because every aspect of it requires some kind of sophisticated information for it to be even intelligible what you're talking about. So that's why somebody like Jack Szostak, who's a Nobel laureate who now who's worked in origin of life research for several decades, he becomes a target of the creationists because he actually does take the effort to try his best to simplify it for the layperson. And then what do the creationists do? They go, look at this. This is ridiculous. This is in Nature, the journal Nature. This is the ridiculous stuff. No, that's not in the journal Nature. It's in a magazine, and it's for lay people with these big pictures and everything. So of course it's not rigorous. Give me a break, guys.
But it has to be simplified. Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
must be, yeah, because the lay people don't even really know what DNA is or what proteins are, like structurally, fundamentally, what they're made of. So it's hard. It's very hard.
Absolutely, undoubtedly. And coming back to the debate, like, how was the experience leading into it? How were you feeling when you were like in the middle of it? What was the entire experience like?
It's certainly chaotic. I knew to an extent what was going to happen because I knew I was there to really press on him. And you can see how worked up he gets in his videos alone in his office. He's shouting and I get these great screenshots of him that I can use in my videos just when he's in his office because he gets really shouty. So I was like, all right,
And
I
meme the
know.
hell out of them.
Yeah, and meme the hell. Yeah, they became memes after a certain point in my content. But so I knew he was going to lose his mind. I even still was a little bit jarred by it because it's a lot when it's directed directly at you. But as soon as he started doing that, I was like, oh, this is gold. You don't even have to hear what either of us are saying. You can just observe that one person is losing their mind and you can tell what's going on. It's not that hard to figure out. But yeah, I wanted to take the opportunity to press him on a number of the most blatant lies that he has been telling repeatedly in his content, because I know that his viewers have never watched any of my content and never will. So it was a rare opportunity where I knew they finally have to listen to me talk. And they're going to hear these lies and they're going to watch James waffle and in attempting to redirect and change the subject, which is all he did every time. The first time I did it, he jumped over to his Blackboard theatrics and didn't answer the question. And it was breathtaking. It was breathtaking to behold. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually reminded me of a lot of these atheist experience and the line episodes and stuff like that, where you have a theist who comes on and he is being absolutely blown away by the
Yeah.
arguments that the hosts are giving. And they just get more and more pissed off with everything. And just finally, I think there was one which was brilliant where Matt Dillahunty had just very coolly dismissed everything. This guy says, "Why don't I just come over and punch you in the face?" And they hung up on him
Yeah.
immediately. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And they just see them
And
jumping around all over the place.
it's funny because his entire identity relies on this. I'm just a good, earnest Christian. So he can't. And then you have to watch his viewers try to justify it after the fact. Okay, James shouted, but it's only because Dave was so mean. And it's, you guys, my God, I cannot believe you're trying to actually justify this behavior. He was like shaking and convulsing and yeah, it was crazy.
But you have to admit, you do have a very provocative kind of way of going about a debate. Is that just something like you've got that kind of flavor of a lot of sarcasm and poking, and you do that in a lot of your videos as well, especially when it comes to the debunking videos and the flat earth videos, etc. But so is this something that you developed over time, and this is just you? This is just you.
It's a good question. I think I developed it over time in the sense that I wasn't this way when I was 10 years old necessarily. But it's just, look, I'm tired of it. I'm a no nonsense kind of guy. I call them like I see them. When someone's a fraud, I call them a fraud. When someone's lying, I present their lies to them, if in the case of a debate, to their face, and press them. I'm not here to play nice. This is not how I would behave with someone with whom I have a genuine disagreement on, right? A difference of opinion. That's a completely different story. If you and I are debating which one is the best Beatles album, I'm not going to go, "You fraud, you think that Abbey Road is the best, it's Rubber Soul." No, that's opinion. That's just two people talking. That has nothing to do with what these things are like. This is a guy who is a very toxic influence on society. He lies and he damages the reputation of the scientific community. He promotes science denial, which turns into anti-vax and climate denial and all these other things that have a very quantifiable, direct impact on society. And it's got to be neutralized. So I'm not here to play around. You are ruining the world for other people, and so I'm going to do something about it. That's how I do it here. So
yeah, fair enough. But because I was wondering something where, when I was watching it, that see, the thing is, don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to your way of debate. That's absolutely fine. I think we need every variable of voice or tone that exists out there to have these conversations. And some of them do need to be ascorbic and in your face and telling it as it is. But there is from all the years that I've been learning about skepticism and about argument and debate and stuff like that, there is a large part of it which, I mean, I resonate with because that's my way of discussing things, is to have a certain humility. At least, for example, you have Anthony Magnabosco, who's exactly on the absolute opposite end of the scale, who doesn't even proclaim anything to start with. He will just ask questions in the Socratic method, in the Socratic manner, which I also resonate with.
Hmm.
So because you're a science communicator, you've been teaching students about science and how to deal with it and how to unpack things and how to understand science and the fundamentals behind it. How do you think your tone is affecting the future science communicators, the future scientists who are also watching your channel and being influenced by you? Um, in what way do you think your tone helps them or maybe doesn't? Or, what are your thoughts on
Well, I think I can serve as an example for a certain kind of science communication, right? I think that it is necessary, it is warranted. I think that a calmer approach, as you describe, is more effective in a one-on-one interaction, right? If I was
that?
talking to somebody who had earnestly fallen for the propaganda that I'm debunking, I would not take the same approach, right? But this is a situation where it is very important to me, and I've watched a lot of things, Bill Nye, Ken Ham debate, things like that, where I think that if you do not call it what it is, if you do not call it pseudoscience, if you do not call it fraudulence, if you do not call it a script of lies or whatever it truly objectively is, you are doing a disservice to the situation because you're giving this false air of legitimacy to the other side, right? What they want, the charlatan, the grifter, the liar, the propaganda peddler, all they want is to be seen as equivalent with science so that people will watch and go, well, I don't know. He was more handsome, and that one was more. And then they can come away with their own impression of it. You got to dash that on the rocks. Now, some people maybe don't have the stomach for that. They don't want to do it my way, and that's fine. I would never demand that anyone do things my way. This is my way. If it works for you, also do it. But there are other people. But the thing is, I know other people, other sidecomers that I really respect. Erica of Gutsick Gibbon, I've watched her have little debates with even Discovery Institute people. She did one with Gunter Beckley, and there's all these situations where you have someone like her who is very polite and very respectful. And what happens when you go into the comment section of those videos is you have all of these people going, wow, that is how debate should go. Everyone was so polite and everything was so pleasant. Ultimately, nothing she said changed my mind and nothing is any different at all. But she was really nice. Right. So is that the outcome that you want? I don't know. You know what I mean? There's no strategy that's going to check all the boxes. You're never going to get all the science deniers to change their mind in one fell swoop. So you pick the way that works for you. And this is my way. I'm scorched earth, baby. This is how we got to do
Ah,
it. So.
yeah, and it is necessary because I've seen, for example, like Matt Dillahunty, who is he pulls no punches.
He's ruthless. Yeah.
He's absolutely ruthless. And yet he also has a tremendous effect on the people who are listening. So I do see the value in that for sure. I'm not like that, but I don't have a aggressive bone in my body. I'm more Buddhist.
Yeah. It's fine. You got to do what works for you.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
a personal touch to it, but I defy anyone to. No one has ever been able to convince me that my approach is not correct. You know what I mean? I get
Hmm.
that gut reaction from people. And they go, "You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be snarky in your debunks. You shouldn't get into the trenches and argue with their followers or anything like that."
Yeah.
Convince me. I have yet to be convinced that it's not
Fair
the way to
enough.
go. Yeah.
But have you ever been proven wrong on something, like in your videos, in debates, etc., etc.? Has that ever happened?
It's possible on a trivial detail that I can't recall off the top of my head. Certainly not for the main thesis, right? No one
Hmm.
proved that the Earth is flat. No one proved that God that evolution isn't real, or no one. The meat of it. Obviously, I'm not wrong. Otherwise, what would I be doing there? I'm pushing back against people who are denying science. I'm pushing back against idiot flat earthers and things like that.
Hmm.
Of course, I'm sure that there are small details that I've been incorrect about that I just can't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And for your episodes, for each one of your episodes, how frequently do you publish? I'm sorry, I haven't looked up the stats right
I post 3 times a week, but those are my academic tutorials. They're
now.
not as meaty, you know what I mean? Like I cover various academic subjects. Like right now, I'm putting out content on geology and ecology and philosophy and economics, and they're just little 4 to 12 minute videos, and they're very simple. The production value is minimal. It's not very fancy.
Mm.
It's not like the debunks that require a tremendous amount. They're longer and they require that I read primary literature and do more. Those take more effort, certainly.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. But
Yeah.
that is quite a hefty schedule you've got there. Um,
Yeah.
I need to get my shit together and get that get my show on the road. But and how do you go about, especially the preliminary literature ones, the debunking ones? What's your process of getting into that, like selecting the topic and digging into it? How do you go about it? Do you have a set process that you go through with each one of these?
Not really. I find something that pisses me off. You know what I mean? I try to make sure it's at least somewhat adjacent to my expertise. What I know best is like chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, that sort of realm. I'm
Mm,
competent with biology, I'm competent with physics, but that's the closer. That's why I was such a good fit for taking on James, is that the abiogenesis stuff is truly right where my best knowledge lies. So
ah,
my ability to take him on was a lot more than any of the other debunkers in this realm, because if you studied biology, if you studied anthropology or something, you're missing that. You need that hardcore organic chemistry aspect to be able to talk about that stuff. But yeah, I just find something that irritates me, some charlatan, some fraud, somebody that's talking a bunch of crap. I watch a decent chunk of their stuff and I take notes, because there's definitely some things that they say that I immediately know how to counter and I immediately want to rip them on. And then I fill in the blanks if they make claims that requires I look up certain literature. Sometimes they just say such and such has never been done. And then it's, well, did it? Look at that. Yes, it has a dozen times. Here we go. It takes a 5 second search on Google Scholar to find it. But, and then also, certainly with the case of the abiogenesis stuff, I did actually reach out to a lot of different researchers, and then I began corresponding with a number of them. And some of them aided in the way of directing me towards specific papers, things like that. Yeah.
so if you had a chance to do this debate over again, would you have done anything differently?
Well, no, not really. The only thing is that I would have the advantage of knowing exactly which lies he was going to tell, so I could have been more prepared on the very specific papers. Because the thing is, I had 100 papers ready to go, and I ended up only needing about 6 of them. So I just would have
Mm.
nailed those 6, because it's hard to remember the details of like 100 papers in your head. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
absolutely.
Only a couple moments where I was like, okay, this paper is about this. And they're like, what's this specific detail? I'm like, I don't remember that detail. Okay, whatever. It's in the paper. This is what the paper says. And then his fans are like, oh, he doesn't. Shut up. You don't even know what we're talking about, you idiots. So it's just like, it was treacherous, with like them ready to like boo for things that they don't
Yeah,
even know
I
what's going
saw
on.
these. I
And
remember
it's
those
just like,
parts.
you people are idiots. So no, if I could do it again, I just would know what he's going to lie about. And then also maybe I
Mm.
would have gone in and sabotaged his chalkboard thing, or I would have,
Yeah,
I
that
don't know.
was so weird. Like he just
Yeah,
clueless,
it's like
clueless.
the
And it was
guy,
clever on
all he
his
had was
end
pageantry.
from
It
a
was
strategy.
clever on his end in the sense that that was the only dumb thing he could do to make them go, yeah, yeah, he wrote Clueless, so it's true, yeah. It's people. But yeah, all he had was pageantry. Yeah, I don't really know what else I could have done. It just all I could do was shove facts in his face and shove his lies in his face, and then keep trying to corral him every time he tried to jump and gish gallop. Hey, over here,
Yeah.
and then call attention to it. Right, put the spotlight, which I did probably 2 or 3
Yeah.
times. Go. He's gish galloping. I asked him this thing. He's talking about that. Why do you suppose that is? He can't even talk about this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it was brutal the way you did it. I
Yeah.
It was fantastic. I love that. But that kind of a lot of the content that you've made has been about flat Earth, which I have. Some of them are absolutely fantastic, especially when you're explaining flat Earth without refuting flat Earth without
Yeah.
using science,
The
just
bite-sized
using.
ones, yeah.
But there have been a couple of ideas that I've encountered, which I didn't even know about before, which was like the electric universe. What the
Hmm.
hell is that about? Like, have you
Yeah.
where
So
did
I
that come
encountered
from?
this stuff. There's all these different flavors of it, but it's basically there's a common thread that runs through pseudoscience in the realm of astrophysics, and it's all this gravity denial and Einstein denial, and which may have a link to anti-Semitism. I don't know. And it's just all these different charlatans that astrophysicists are wrong. They arrogantly think they know about the universe, and me, this not even a real physicist, I know the truth. And then people who get off on an anti-establishment narrative will buy into it. And it's just insane because it's not like anti-vax or something where there's a direct interface with medicine and something that you may be having to take, or like a very direct societal thing going on here, right? Astrophysics doesn't really affect us. If you don't want it, if you don't want to learn about astrophysics, you just don't learn about it. But yeah, there's these people who just go on there and Einstein is wrong, general relativity is stupid, and the and stars don't work by nuclear fusion. It's something else. It's this other bullshit I made up. And people just lap it up, man. Not a lot, but thousands and thousands of people that are just super into this whole thing.
Why do
I
you
had to
think that?
debunk some of that.
Why do you think that is? Like, why are people just wandering off into the wilderness and just creating their own nonsense for reality?
It is a symptom of delusional narcissism, I believe, because you have people that really desperately need to feel superior. They need to feel superior in intellect, right? They need to be like, I know the truth. But the problem is many delusional narcissists are also stupid or at least very ignorant. But it doesn't matter. Their neurosis will cause them to live in this fantasy world where they understand physics better than Einstein, right? That, oh, Einstein was an idiot. Here's this other thing. It's like you couldn't pass a middle school physics quiz. You couldn't even draw a force diagram. What are you like, how did you convince yourself of this? But the thing is, this pathology is out there, and there are charlatans that take advantage of it. And they present themselves with this confidence, with this alternate narrative. So it fits it fits it scratches that itch psychologically that that viewer wants, this
Yeah.
secret truth about space. And then they present themselves very confidently. In the case of Electric Universe and Wall Thornhill, who he actually died recently, but there's a few of those guys, and they have their little conferences. And basically, anybody who's a fraud about space goes to the conference. They can even be saying things that contradict each other. It doesn't matter. The common thread is that they're right and astrophysics as a whole is wrong. And they just spew their bullshit. And people are like, wow, we're here witnessing a paradigm shift in science. It's the new thing. And just, oh my God,
It's just like
I don't get
people.
it.
Yeah, I don't, because I've been trying to figure this out. Like, I understand the anti-vax position. I understand why it exists. Is because
Hmm.
people have just become complacent because they don't have to deal with these incredibly deadly diseases anymore. So they're just taking it for granted.
That's
But
a component
it's
of it. Yeah.
yeah, but the as far as things like astrophysics, etc., is concerned, when you start coming up with completely novel, random shit like this electric universe nonsense, it boggles the mind. I'm like, it's okay, maybe it's a person who has
Hmm.
a very active imagination and has just thought this stuff up on a Sunday afternoon while high on marijuana or something. And
Well,
just
no, but most of them are grifters, right? They're not.
yeah.
Most of the people who are peddling this stuff don't actually believe it, right? They're
Mm,
these guys. They're the ones who run the conferences and the ones who sell all the stuff. Just this is their income. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You had what's his name, Donald, whatever the guy who it was a Sapphire project, and now it's Orion.
yeah.
They take $25,000 investments. They're
Oh
defrauding
my
people of
God.
large sums of money, right? This is money for them. They
That's what
know
it
they're
is.
completely full of
Mm.
crap. But yeah,
It's
so
just, it's so weird. But speaking of the anti-vax movement, apparently there's a pool going around to debate Robert F. Kennedy
yeah,
Jr.
yeah,
on Joe Rogan's podcast.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, okay. Of
would you
course,
want
I'd
to do
tweet
that
it
out?
all over. Of course, I would do that. Are you kidding me? That would be huge for me. And I would work hard and I would humiliate him. But yeah, see, the thing with that is I'm not quite big enough. So I tweeted like crazy and nobody noticed or cared, obviously. But when medical professionals say, we should not be debating RFK because it gives him an air of legitimacy, part of me wants to push back on that, but part of me gets it. Right. Part of me is
Yeah, I
you're
get
not
that.
wrong, but that's why I should do it. I'm not a doctor, right? This is my job. I'm a science communicator. I sit in
Mhm.
between the scientific and medical communities and the public. I'm the one in between. I'm the one that interfaces with the public. I'm the ambassador. I'm the one that transmits the information both ways.
Yeah.
So I'm not making doctors look bad by
Mm.
humiliating RFK, right? So I would gladly do it. I would gladly do that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very important to push back on ideas like that. This
Yes.
shit is costing people is life or death, very literally. So
Absolutely.
if I had that kind of weight to throw around, you're much closer, relatively speaking, to be able to push that around. But I hope somebody does, and I hope
Yeah.
somebody does mash him into the ground because my God, that man's
Yeah.
got blood on his hands.
I just want to flush all of these turds. It's just I'm just so sick of it. I'm just so tired of these people gaining so much traction and gaining so
Yeah,
much notoriety and gaining so much wealth from peddling just a script of lies. It's just a well-rehearsed and well-funded script of lies, and I would like the opportunity to make a career of exposing every last one of them. That's what I
well,
want to do.
that's what we're both on the path to do, right?
Yeah,
We're
that's right.
trying our best.
Trying
But
our best. Yeah.
so, what are you going to be? What's in the future for you? Well, of course, PsyCon's happening. What are you going to be talking about at PsyCon?
PsyCon, it's an interesting situation because I haven't begun preparing for it because I'd like to. I've given a version of a talk several times now at a couple of conferences and events and things like that, and I think I want to retool it a little bit just because I have to know very in a real sense that I'm very much preaching to the choir at an event like that. Everybody agrees with everything I'm saying and knows that everything that I debunk is fraudulent. But I want to try to talk a little bit about my specific strategies, successes I've had, challenges I've had. Like I want us to all sit in that room and think together about what are we doing? Like how can we do this? You know what I mean? Here's what I've done that's worked. I think I'll be using a lot of examples from Discovery Institute because I've been giving them quite a hard time lately, and it's working really well. So I'm going to be talking about that. Just whatever. I want to try to share some unique insight that I've found in what I do because we're all there. We're all debunkers there, you know. So it's like
Exactly.
I'm not gonna be like, did you guys know that this thing is false? It's like, yeah, we all knew that, man. What are you talking about? We got to
And
find out.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And it's first of all, PsyCon is amazing because you just feel like we're all on the right track. We're all on the same plane, and we're all fighting for the same thing. But the
Mm-hmm.
astonishing thing is, you also kind of realize that we've been fighting this collectively for years, and
Decades. Yeah.
the older members of PsyCon who come in have been doing that for decades longer than we have,
Yeah.
and there is a part of me which kind of goes, man, this
And it's
looks like an
gotten worse.
impossible.
It's gotten
Yeah.
worse, not better. Yeah. It's
And every day you have new nonsense to deal with. Oh my God.
yeah. And
Uh,
more people who fall for it. COVID really ramped up the science denial.
yeah,
It's been
exactly.
bad.
It's been really
Yeah.
nasty. But oh, there was one thing which I really wanted to talk with you about because your videos on transgender people and the science of transgender
Mm-hmm.
has been very informative because
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that Richard Dawkins
Yeah.
is
Not on the
getting
right
it.
side of this one. Yeah.
I think, look at him.
Just today, I didn't watch it, but I saw a thumbnail of Dawkins and Matt Walsh on the same team on a debate against someone else. And I was like, dude,
Oh
you
my
Dawkins,
God.
like he's shattering his legacy with this. And I just,
Yeah.
if I get the chance to talk to him this year, maybe I can talk some sense into him. I don't know. Yeah.
So I swear I've already sent him several mails saying that I would love to interview you while you're at SciCon. I won't take too much time out of your thing, so I'll try
Yeah.
and get a little bit of equipment and sit down and have a conversation with him, uh, primarily about this. Not just, of course, I want to talk about a lot of other stuff, but this one really shook me. I couldn't believe that he's let his confirmation bias get to him this bad. But so just to
He's
as a
really old. That's part of it. He's
yeah, and
really
he's
old.
yeah, he's got a few strongly held beliefs that he's holding on to really tightly there.
Hmm.
But just to give an overview, I'll link the videos in the description. But just tell me what you found out about the science behind the transgender phenomenon,
Yeah,
primarily.
so we all had to have that moment 10 years ago or whatever it was when we discovered that being trans is a thing. And a good chunk of society has been fighting since that moment where they just don't want to accept that being trans is a thing. But very clearly, there are millions of people who are trans. And what you come to understand, if you actually have an open mind about it, is that there's sex, which is a concept that is linked to your sex chromosomes and usually on a one-to-one correspondence with your external genitalia and reproductive organs. So all of that is the domain of sex. And then there is gender identity, which is more subtle, but it is physical. It's a neuroanatomical phenomenon. It's not just, I think I'm, it's the thing is there is such a thing as having the experience of being male or female, and it is correlated with brain structure. So you can
Yeah.
do MRIs of trans people and you find anatomical differences in the brain. It's not a perfect science yet, but they're identifying in the Matt Walsh thing. I just flash a few papers that I found, the uncinate nucleus, and then this other, right? There's parts of the brain that have specific structural features that correlate with gender identity. So it is a physical
Hmm.
thing. And the thing is that the overwhelming percentage of people, something like 99 or even 99.9 or even greater percent of people are what we are now calling cisgender, where your sex and your gender identity align. So I'm
Hmm.
cisgender because my sex is male and my gender identity is male. So I'm cis.
Hmm.
And trans is when they don't align. So that would be if I'm of male sex, but then my brain structure was such that I had female gender identity, I would be a trans woman. That is what society has decided to label that situation as, trans woman. So the problem with conservatives and transphobes and all these things is that number one, they refuse to acknowledge that sex and gender are different things.
Hmm.
Sex, gender in general, but in particular gender identity, which is a subset of gender that is specifically biological and not social or anything. Uh, but furthermore, that they absolutely refuse. They refuse to listen to what educated people are saying and just continue to spew the same things over and over again. You can't change your sex. You can't change your gender. Men can't turn into women. Blah blah blah. Nobody is turning into anything. Trans women have male sex. They know they have male sex. The entire scientific community knows that they have male sex. They're not saying otherwise, but they have female gender identity. And then in calling them trans women, that is a social courtesy that we afford them to ascribe them with dignity, right? So if you were to say, oh, it's a man because gender identity female, sex is male, so I'm going to call them a man. Well, okay, you're just a jerk now, but at least we agree on physical reality, right? You're just being rude, but we agree on what's going on biologically. But they absolutely refuse. Liberals think that men can have babies. Yeah, trans men, because they have uteruses, right? Nobody
Exactly.
thinks that cis men can have babies. No one's ever said that, but they're such toddlers that anybody who brings it up, they have these little tantrums and they put their fingers in their ears. They just won't listen to anything. You guys, trans people are a thing. Get over it, okay? Just deal with it and move on, okay? It's like,
Yeah,
come on.
exactly. And I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson's Starry Messenger
Hmm.
audiobook, and I just finished that, and it is phenomenal. Like, I love his cosmic perspective on things. And it's especially in gender identity. And he said this in many interviews as well. And I agree with this. It's like we've divided sports, say, which is one of the most controversial parts of this discussion, is we have divided sports between men and women. And that's the way that it has carried on for millennia. But we maybe in the future should have other divisions which distinguish maybe a certain level of testosterone or estrogen in their body. It's not just men and women. Maybe it's muscle mass. Maybe it's weight class, like we have in boxing, which is much more evenly divided. There could be a lot of other divisions that we could have in sports to take things forward. We just haven't wrapped our heads around it enough at this
Yeah.
point of time to really be able to adjust. And I think there's a lot more to discern about this, about the fact that humans are in a much larger variety than one imagines.
Well, yeah, that much is absolutely true, right? Boy's penis, girl's vagina is what you learn in second grade. And as it turns out, human biology is not that simple.
Yeah,
Just tell a conservative, oh, what would you call someone with two X chromosomes that expresses male genitals? Watch their heads explode, right? Human biology is complicated. Sorry, guys. It's not like they're
absolutely.
like the liberals are science deniers. No, you are science deniers because you refuse to learn anything beyond a third grade level. Now, the where I want to offer a little bit of sympathy is with the sports stuff and all the social stuff. There is actually something to discuss. We could
Mhm.
have nuanced discussions about where trans people should be doing sports and where they should be changing and all of these things like that. But that's
Yeah.
never going to happen until conservatives find the courage to have an honest discussion about human biology. Then we can talk about society. Because to be honest, I would push back on what Neil said, is it's impractical. You can't have a dozen weight classes or different hormone classes or things like that for all these sports, right? And I do think that Leah Thomas, the trans female swimmer, that's not fair. I don't think that she should have been allowed to compete in that. And so that's why in my original video, I thought I was taking a centrist position, but
Mhm.
instead conservatives were like, he's an animal. But I don't know what's going to happen with sports and where everybody gets to go in all of the subtleties of society. But first, we need to be on the same page of biology, and then we can have an adult conversation about what to do with all the social stuff and figure that
Mm.
out. Because there is
You're
something
right.
to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even though this might be happening to a very small percentage of the human population, it is still a large number.
It's millions of
But
people.
exactly, millions of
Yeah.
people all across the world. Even in India, we've had newspapers where we've had articles which have come out which says a husband is giving birth to a child. I'm like, yeah, okay, it's two trans people who are
It's
married.
a
One
trans
is
man. Yeah.
it's a trans man married to a trans woman, and they're having a child in the only way that they have available to them. So be it.
Certainly interesting,
Yeah,
an
indeed.
interesting, rare situation, but yeah.
Exactly. It's nothing to be ridiculed and definitely nothing to be ostracized about. And I'm trying to put together, I've already just recently had another interview with a trans person and a journalist who has given me a lot of very good information. So that video will have just released. If you guys haven't watched it, then I'll put
Cool.
that link in the description as well. But yeah, this is something that I really need to figure out. And if I get to have with Richard Dawkins, I was going to say Charles Darwin. Oh. But if I'm going to have dinner with Richard Dawkins, I want to try and bring this up and see what happens
Yeah.
coming up with that.
If you need any backup, let me know, man.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks a ton for joining me, man. I think we can probably have 50 other discussions, but I will see you
Sure.
at PsyCon and we'll continue
Yeah.
this.
I'll see you
But
over
thanks
there.
so much for joining us on Rationable Conversations.
Absolutely.
And
Thanks for
it's
having me.
been an absolute pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for watching. If you really enjoyed this conversation, give it a like. If you didn't like it, you can do the other thing. And do subscribe to the channel for more content like this and interesting conversations that we're having with very interesting people like Professor Dave. So thank you very much for everyone for watching. Thanks, Dave, for joining, and we'll catch you later. Be rational.